The day before Thanksgiving, I was thrown out of my home like a piece of trash. I never thought my own daughter would be capable of destroying me like this. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd share. And if you, for a single second, feel like this sounds familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Carol Henderson. I'm 62 years old, and for 30 years, I lived in a 2-story house in Westchester County, New York. A house I bought brick by brick with my late husband, Michael, working double shifts at a garment factory while he built his small plumbing business. The walls of that house held the echoes of Christmas laughter, children's birthdays, and the silent tears I shed when Michael died 5 years ago from a sudden, massive heart attack. That morning, November 27th, I got up at 6, like always. My wrinkled hands, stained with the bluish veins that betray the years, moved automatically, preparing breakfast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen as I spread orange marmalade on toast. It was the same ritual every day for the last 3 years, ever since my daughter Jessica and her family moved temporarily into my house after her husband Jason lost his job at a consulting firm. Temporary had turned into permanent without anyone asking me. Jessica came down the stairs, shuffling in her slippers, her hair a mess, and that look of annoyance that had lately become her permanent expression whenever she saw me. At 34, she still had the beauty she inherited from her father, but her eyes had hardened in a way that pained me to recognize. "Morning, sweetie," I said, just like every morning, as I poured coffee into her favorite mug, the blue ceramic one I gave her for her college graduation. She didn't even look at me. Her fingers flew across the screen of her latest model iPhone as she chewed on the toast I had prepared with my own hands. "Mom, we need to talk," she muttered without looking up from her phone. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. Over the last few months, I had noticed subtle but painful changes. The conversations that would stop the moment I walked into a room, the whispers between Jessica and Jason that ceased abruptly when they heard my footsteps, the growing coldness from my grandchildren, 12-year-old Chloe and 9-year-old Matthew, who used to run to hug me, and now barely said a word. "What is it, Jessica?" I asked, wiping my damp hands on the embroidered apron Michael gave me for our 20th wedding anniversary. She finally looked up, and what I saw in her eyes made my blood run cold. There was no love, no respect, just weariness, as if she were looking at something that was no longer useful, something that needed to be discarded. "Mom, you've served your purpose here," she said with a coldness that cut through me like a dagger. "You took care of us, gave us a roof over our heads, helped us when we needed it, but we don't need you anymore. It's time for you to find your own place." The words echoed in my mind like whispers in an empty cathedral. Served my purpose? Like I was the hired help whose contract had just expired. My own place? "Jessica, this is my house. The house where you were born, where you took your first steps, where we celebrated your birthdays." "It was your house," she interrupted, her voice sounding harder than the marble floor. "Now it's ours. Jason got an excellent job at a tech company. The kids need space to grow without interference." The word interference hit me like a slap. I, who had sacrificed my savings to pay the bills when they had no income. I, who had cooked, cleaned, and cared for my grandchildren when they went out partying on weekends. I, who had slept on the living room couch for months so they could use my master bedroom because it was bigger and more comfortable for the family. "I don't understand, Jessica. This house is mine. Michael and I made payments on it for 20 years. Mom, Dad left very clear legal documents before he died. This property is rightfully mine. You have that little cabin in the Catskills you inherited from Grandma Rose. You can live there perfectly fine." My mind went foggy. The little cabin in the Catskills was a nearly 100-year-old stone structure with no central heating, a leaky roof, and busted pipes. It had been abandoned for 5 years because I didn't have the money to fix it. Michael always said we'd fix it up one day to spend our summers there, but that day never came. "That place is uninhabitable, Jessica. It doesn't have electricity or running water or—" "Those are just excuses, Mom," she cut me off, standing up from the table with a sharp movement. "You have your widow's pension. You can live perfectly well on that. We can't afford to keep you here anymore. The kids are growing up and they need their privacy. Just then, Chloe and Matthew came running into the kitchen. My grandchildren, who used to jump into my arms shouting, "Grandma Carol!" now walked past me as if I were invisible. Chloe grabbed her school backpack without a glance. Matthew snatched a cookie from the jar I always kept full for him. "Morning, Grandma," Matthew mumbled without looking up, as if he'd been taught the greeting was an annoying obligation. "Good morning, my love," I whispered, trying to pat his head, but he instinctively pulled away. Jessica walked them to the door and returned with that fake smile she had perfected for uncomfortable situations. "As you can see, Mom, they're in a hurry. School, after-school activities. They don't have time for this." This was me, their grandmother, the woman who had raised them during their first years while their parents were establishing their careers. "Jessica, please, don't do this to me. I'm your mother." "And I'm a mother too," she retorted dryly. "And my priority is my children. I can't keep carrying additional responsibilities." Additional responsibilities. That's what I was to my own daughter. "I'll give you until tomorrow night to pack your personal things," she continued, checking her watch as if she were late for an important meeting. "An appraiser is coming on Friday to evaluate the renovations we want to do. We're turning your room into a home office for Jason. My room. The room where Michael and I had shared 30 years of marriage, where he died holding my hand as I whispered to him that everything would be okay, where I had cried every night after his funeral, hugging his pillow that still held his scent of cheap cologne and honesty. And if I refuse?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Jessica looked at me with a mix of pity and annoyance. "Mom, don't make me call the police. The papers are in order. This house has legally been mine since Dad died. You've been living here out of my generosity, but that generosity has its limits." Generosity. As if the 3 years I had spent keeping her family afloat had been a favor she was doing me by allowing me to pay her expenses. That night, I packed my belongings into 2 brown leather suitcases Michael had given me for our honeymoon trip to Paris. Inside, I fit some winter clothes, family photos Jessica allowed me to take, my mother's rosary, and the few documents that proved my existence. Everything that was left of 62 years of life fit into 2 worn-out suitcases. The next day, Jessica wasn't there when I left the house for the last time. She had left the keys to the Catskills cabin on the kitchen table and a handwritten note. "Mom, this is for the best. You'll understand in time. Take care. Jessica." She didn't even have the courage to say goodbye to my face. I loaded the suitcases into my old 2010 Ford Focus, the only possession that was still completely in my name, and drove away without looking back. But I couldn't help but see in the rearview mirror as the house grew smaller until it disappeared among the streets of the neighborhood where I had been happy for 3 decades. I drove aimlessly for hours, crying in silence as the radio announced the festivities for Thanksgiving. A celebration of families gathered together, giving thanks for what they had. I was giving thanks for what I had just lost. 3 decades had passed. 3 entire decades of my life given to a daughter who now saw me as a burden. As I drove up I-87 north toward the Catskills, my mind filled with memories that hurt like broken glass in an open wound. I remembered when Jessica was 8 and broke her arm falling off her bike. I left my shift at the factory to rush to the hospital. I was fired for leaving without notice, but I didn't care. My daughter needed me. I spent 3 days sleeping in an uncomfortable plastic chair by her bed, singing her lullabies until the pain subsided and she could smile again. "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to take care of you just like you take care of me," she had whispered in her little girl voice, as I stroked the blonde hair she inherited from her father. Where was that little girl now? I remembered the sleepless nights when she had pneumonia at 12. Michael was working the night shift, and I stayed alone with her, taking her temperature every hour, giving her medicine, dabbing her forehead with a damp cloth when the fever spiked. I think I slept a total of 4 hours that entire week. "You're the best mom in the world," she had said when she finally recovered, hugging me with those skinny arms that seemed too weak to hold on so tight. I remembered when she married Jason 14 years ago. I paid for half the wedding with the savings I had set aside to buy myself a new car. My old Dodge Neon was falling apart, But I wanted my daughter to have her dream wedding at the Grand Regency Hotel. I spent over $15,000 I didn't have, taking out loans that took me 5 years to repay. Mom, I don't know how to thank you for all this. You're incredible, she had said as I fastened the wedding dress that I also paid for, because Jason's parents had other expenses. And when the children were born, my God, the sacrifices I made. I quit my part-time job at a clothing store to become their free, full-time nanny. Chloe's first teeth came in while she was in my arms, not her mother's. Matthew took his first steps toward me, while Jessica was busy developing her professional career as an architect. I changed diapers, made baby food, sang lullabies, bandaged scrapes, and soothed nightmares. For 5 years, I was more of a mother to my grandchildren than their own mother was. And when Jessica finally decided she wanted to connect more with her kids, I became the grandma who interferes too much. Now, driving into exile in a ruined cabin, I wondered when exactly I had gone from being indispensable to being a burden. At what point did the goodnight kisses become obligatory greetings? When did the daily calls turn into terse text messages? My phone rang, interrupting my painful thoughts. It was Jessica. Mom, did you get to the cabin yet? Her voice sounded different, almost worried. I'm on my way, I answered curtly. Hey, I forgot to tell you, the kids asked about you this morning. Chloe wanted to give you a drawing she made at school. A drawing. My granddaughter had made a drawing for me, and I wouldn't be there to receive it. I felt my throat tighten. Tell her grandma loves her very much. Mom, don't be melodramatic. It's just temporary. When you fix up the cabin and get settled, you can come visit on weekends. Visit them, as if I were a distant relative. As if I weren't the woman who had given her life in 30 years of sacrifice. On weekends? I asked, unable to hide the bitterness. Well, some weekends. When we don't have family plans. Family plans. I was no longer part of the family. I have to go, Jessica. I'm driving. Okay. Take care, Mom. And don't make me feel guilty about this. It's for the best. She hung up before I could reply. It was probably for the best because I didn't know what to say. How do you explain to your daughter that she's killing you? How do you tell her that her every word is another twist of the knife? The GPS said I had about 25 miles to go when it started to rain. A fine, cold November rain that made the landscape blurry, as if the whole world were crying with me. That's when I saw the flashing hazard lights on the side of the road. A white Dodge Grand Caravan was pulled over on the shoulder, its hood up. A man in his 40s was struggling with a spare tire in the downpour, completely soaked. Through the fogged-up windows of the van, I could make out the silhouettes of a woman and several children. My first instinct was to keep driving. I had my own problems, my own broken heart, my own shattered life to deal with. But something about the scene reminded me of us when Jessica was little. Michael and I had a similar breakdown on a road in Connecticut, raining just like this, with a 6-year-old Jessica asking every 5 minutes when we would get there. An old man had stopped to help us. I never learned his name, but I never forgot his kindness. I slowed down and pulled over behind the van. The man looked up, surprised, as I got out of my car in my gray wool coat, splashing through the puddles forming on the asphalt. Do you need a hand? I shouted over the noise of the rain. Ma'am, don't worry about it, he shouted back, wiping greasy hands on his pants. It's just the tire. I'm almost done. But I could see he was shivering from the cold, and his movements were getting clumsier. I walked over to the passenger side window and tapped on the glass. A woman with dark hair, about 35, rolled it down. Her eyes were puffy from crying, and she was holding a baby a few months old. In the back seat, 2 children, around 8 and 10, watched with worried faces. Hi, I said with the warmest smile I could muster. I'm Carol. Is everything okay? Oh, ma'am, you have no idea, she answered with a soft Southern accent. We're coming all the way from Atlanta. My husband Robert got a job in New York City and we just moved last week. We were heading to my sister's in Albany for Thanksgiving, but the van started acting up and now, her voice broke. The kids are hungry, the baby won't stop crying, and we don't have money for a hotel or a mechanic. The children looked at me with those wide eyes kids get when they sense the adults are worried. The older one, a boy with curly hair, gave me a shy wave. "What's your name?" I asked him. "Diego," he mumbled. "Are you going to help us?" Something inside my chest shattered. That boy's innocence, his immediate trust, reminded me of what I had lost forever. The privilege of being needed by someone. "Of course I am, Diego. We're going to figure this all out." The woman, who introduced herself as Hope, began to cry. "Ma'am, Carol, you don't know what it means to find you. We've been here for 2 hours and nobody stopped. I thought we were going to spend the night on the highway." I helped Robert change the tire, holding my phone's flashlight while he worked. When we were done, I offered to follow them to the next town to make sure the van was running okay. But 15 miles later, the engine started smoking, and we had to pull over again. "That's it," Robert said, hitting the steering wheel in frustration. "This van isn't going anywhere tonight." The kids started to cry. Hope hugged the baby tighter. And I, a 62-year-old woman who had just lost her home and her family, made the most important decision of my life. "Come with me," I told them. "All of you. We're not letting you spend the night here." Robert looked at me like I was crazy. "Ma'am, Carol, we can't impose like that. You've already done so much helping with the tire." "It's no imposition," I insisted, though my own voice sounded strange to me. It had been so long since anyone truly needed my help. "I have a big car. We can go find a hotel in the next town." Hope got out of the van holding the baby and a worn-out diaper bag. "The kids, ma'am. They're a handful. We don't want to cause you any trouble." I looked at them. Diego, the oldest, had that worried expression that shouldn't exist on a 10-year-old's face. His sister Lucy, about 8, was clutching a faded stuffed animal while she watched her father lock up the van with resignation. The baby, who couldn't have been more than 6 months old, was crying with that desperate wail of infants who feel their parents' tension. "They're not a handful," I said firmly. "They're scared children, just like me." That confession slipped out unintentionally, but it was true. I was scared too. I also felt lost on a wet highway, with no idea where to go. We loaded their few belongings into my Ford Focus. School backpacks, one small suitcase, broken toys, and a plastic bag with half-eaten sandwiches that seemed to be their entire food supply for the trip. As I drove toward the Catskills with this family of strangers in my car, something strange began to happen in my chest. For the first time in months, I felt useful, needed, as if my existence had a purpose beyond being a nuisance to my own daughter. Diego, sitting behind me, broke the silence. "Miss Carol, are you sad too?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Kids always know. They always sense the adult's pain, no matter how hard we try to hide it. "Why do you ask that, honey?" "Because your eyes look like my mom's did when Dad lost his job. All red from crying." Hope turned around from the passenger seat. "Diego, don't bother Miss Carol with questions." "He's not bothering me," I said, looking at him in the rearview mirror. "Yes, Diego, I am sad. Sometimes grown-ups feel lost too. So why are you all alone? Don't you have a family?" The innocence of his question pierced my soul. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that your own daughter kicked you out of your house like you were a stranger? "I have a daughter," I admitted. "But sometimes families don't work out the way they're supposed to." Robert, who had been quiet, spoke for the first time. "Miss Carol, we know what it's like to be alone. When I lost my job back in Atlanta, my own brother stopped talking to us. Said we were a burden, like bad luck was contagious." Hope took his hand. "But we also met good people. Like you. People who helped us without knowing us, without expecting anything in return." We reached the outskirts of the town near my cabin when it was already completely dark. The small town looked charming under the streetlights, but I knew my grandmother's cabin was further out, in a rural area with no decent restaurants or hotels. "Listen," I said, stopping the car in front of a gas station. "I'm going to be honest with you. The place I'm staying is in very bad shape. It has no heating, probably no hot water, and it hasn't been cleaned in years. But at least it's a roof. If you want, you can come with me for tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out what to do about the van." The 4 of them looked at me as if I were their guardian angel. "Miss Carol," Hope said, her eyes full of tears, "you have no idea what this means to us. The kids are exhausted. The baby needs a warm place, and we just didn't know what to do." We bought food at the gas station. Sandwiches, milk for the baby, some canned goods, and emergency Mylar blankets they were selling. My widow's pension could cover those expenses, though I knew I'd have to be careful with money in the coming months. My grandmother Rose's cabin was worse than I remembered. The windows had broken panes, the front door barely hung on its hinges, and the smell of dampness was so strong it made us cough as we entered. But it had the basics: 4 walls, a roof that didn't leak too much, and a working fireplace. "Dad, this looks like a haunted house," Lucy whispered, clinging to her father's arm. "It's not haunted, sweetie," I said, turning on my phone's flashlight. "It's just lonely, like me. But together, we're going to make it cozy." And we did. For 2 hours, we worked as a team. Robert found dry wood in a shed and got a fire going in the fireplace. Hope cleaned a room where we could lay out the Mylar blankets as makeshift beds. The kids picked up the broken glass and swept out the dry leaves that had blown in through the windows. I prepared a simple dinner with the canned goods we'd bought: canned chili and Frank's, bread toasted over the fire, and warm milk with honey for the children. As we ate sitting on the floor around the fire, Diego asked me, "Miss Carol, why doesn't your daughter want you to live with her?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Hope shot her son a warning look, but I held up my hand. "It's okay. It's a fair question." I took a deep breath. "Sometimes, Diego, when people grow up, they forget who took care of them when they were little. They forget that their parents might need to be taken care of too." "That's wrong," Lucy declared with the moral authority only children possess. "My teacher says we have to take care of our grandparents because they took care of our parents." "Your teacher is right, little one." Robert looked at me with respect. "Miss Carol, I don't know what kind of problems your daughter has, but anyone who would abandon you is a fool. Forgive my language, but it's the truth." That night, while everyone slept around the fireplace, I stayed awake, watching the flames. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. There was a family breathing around me. Children who had accepted me without question. Adults who treated me with respect and gratitude. The next morning, as we were having instant coffee and some vanilla wafers I found in a cupboard, Hope got a call from her sister in Albany. "Are you serious?" she shouted into the phone. "You're kidding me! That's incredible!" She hung up with a look of absolute shock. "What happened?" Robert asked. "That was Maribel. Remember how she said she had a surprise for us? Well, it turns out her boss, who owns a travel agency, gave her a Caribbean cruise for her years of service. For the whole family, leaving from New York City the day after tomorrow." "A cruise?" Diego jumped with excitement. "Dad, we're gonna see giant boats." "Calm down, Diego," Robert said. "Those things cost a fortune. Your aunt is very generous, but we can't accept something like that." "That's what I thought," Hope continued. "But Maribel says it's all paid for. The problem is, the cruise is for 6 people, and she can only go with her husband. There are 4 empty spots." I stayed quiet, but something inside me began to stir. How many years had it been since I'd left New York for anything other than a family obligation? When was the last time I did something for pure pleasure? "Miss Carol," Hope said shyly, "I know this is crazy, but would you like to come with us?" I was speechless. A family I had known for less than a day was inviting me on a Caribbean cruise. Meanwhile, my own daughter had thrown me out of my house without a second thought. "I couldn't accept something like that," I mumbled. "It would be taking advantage of your generosity." "Generosity?" Robert laughed. "Miss Carol, you saved us last night. You gave us food, shelter, warmth. Without you, we would have spent the night on a cold highway. This isn't generosity, it's justice." The kids started jumping up and down, shouting, "Yes, Miss Carol, come with us. It'll be super fun." For the first time in years, I truly smiled. A smile that came from the bottom of my heart. "You know what?" I said. "I think I will. I think it's time for Carol Henderson to do something completely crazy." 2 days later, we were at the Manhattan Cruise Terminal, walking toward the check-in counters like an improvised but real family. The kids ran ahead, thrilled to see the giant ships docked like floating skyscrapers. Hope carried the baby while pointing at the seagulls flying over our heads. Robert carried our bags with a smile that hadn't left his face since we decided to take this trip together. And me, I felt like a teenager running away from home for the first time. We had spent the previous night in a modest hotel near the port, each paying for our own room with the little money we had. But when we got to the cruise check-in, something strange happened. While Hope was on the phone with her sister Maribel confirming the booking details, I searched my purse for the documents we'd need to board. My wallet was messier than usual after the last few chaotic days. Among the old photos of Jessica and crumpled receipts, my fingers found something I didn't remember putting in there. A credit card that wasn't mine. It was black, with gold letters that shone under the terminal lights. Michael Henderson, Titanium Elite. My late husband's name, engraved in cold metal. My heart stopped for a second. Michael had been dead for 5 years, but this card looked brand new. How did it get in my purse? When had I put it there? Then I remembered. The last time we cleaned out his desk, a year after he died, Jessica had insisted on going through all his papers, in case there were any outstanding debts. I had tucked some documents into my purse, and apparently, this card had come with them. I'd never used it because I assumed it would have been automatically canceled. "Miss Carroll, is everything okay?" Robert asked, noticing my confused expression. "It's just, I found something strange," I said, showing him the card. It was my husband's. I didn't know I had it. Hope came running back with a panicked look on her face. "Carol, we have a huge problem," she yelled, nearly out of breath. Maribel just called. Her boss mixed up the dates. The cruise he gave her was for last week. "These reservations we have are for a different, much more expensive cruise. They're going to cost us almost $6,000 per person. $6,000 per person." The blood drained from my face. With my widow's pension, that was nearly a full year's income. The children, who had been jumping with excitement looking at the ships, went quiet, sensing the tension. "What are we going to do?" Robert muttered. "We don't have that kind of money. Not even close." I looked at the black card in my hand. Michael had always been meticulous with finances. A planner. If he had left this card in my things, there had to be a reason. "Let me try something," I said, walking toward the check-in counter. The young woman behind the counter, a girl of about 25 in a crisp cruise line uniform, smiled at me with the professional courtesy they use in expensive hotels. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you? I have reservations under the name Molina, but it seems there was a mix-up with the dates. Could you check if it's possible to use this card to cover the difference?" I handed her the black card with trembling hands. The girl took it, swiped it through her reader, and her expression changed completely. Her eyes went wide. "Mrs. Henderson," she looked at me with a mixture of shock and respect. "Is this your card?" "It was my husband's. He passed away 5 years ago." "I see." She typed something into her computer and frowned. "Ma'am, this is a lifetime Titanium Elite card, premium business level. According to our system, it has full coverage for luxury services, with no spending limit for cruises and family travel." I didn't understand what she was telling me. No spending limit? What does that mean exactly? "It means your party can be upgraded to the presidential suites, full spa services, premium shore excursions at all ports, and all meals at specialty restaurants, at no additional cost. It's a membership level we only grant to very high-value corporate clients." The world tilted slightly. Michael had a card like this? How? He was a plumber. He had a successful small business, but he never told me about corporate credit cards or premium levels of anything. "There must be a mistake," I mumbled. "There's no mistake, Mrs. Henderson. In fact, I have a note on the account. It says this membership was specifically designed for you to use after the primary cardholder's passing. Your husband set it up that way in 2018. 2018, a year before he died. Michael had been planning something, and he never told me." I walked back to the Molina family, who were waiting with long faces next to their luggage. "What happened?" Hope asked. "We're getting on the ship," I said, in a voice that didn't sound like my own. "All of us, in presidential suites." Diego let out a whoop of joy that made several people turn to look at us. "For real, Miss Carroll? You're not kidding?" "I'm not kidding, sweetie. Apparently my husband left me a surprise. During the check-in process, a cruise manager came to personally assist us. We were assigned 3 suites on the ship's highest deck, with private balconies overlooking the ocean. The kids ran from room to room, screaming with excitement at the sight of the king-sized beds, marble bathrooms, and mini fridges stocked with candy and soda. "Carol," Hope said to me, sitting on the bed in her suite while the baby slept in her arms. "This feels like a dream. I can't believe this is happening." "Neither can I admitted, looking out from the balcony at the port of New York, which was growing smaller as the ship began to sail. 3 days ago, I was crying on a highway, not knowing where I'd sleep. Now I'm on a luxury cruise with people who treat me like family." "You are family," Robert said, appearing at the door with Diego and Lucy hanging off his arms. "The kids have already officially adopted you as their grandmother. And Hope and well, you saved our lives, literally." That night, during dinner at the ship's main dining room, I got a call from Jessica. "Mom? Where the hell are you? I've been calling the cabin in the Catskills and no one's answering." "I'm at sea, Jessica." "What do you mean you're at sea? What does that mean?" "I'm on a cruise. In the Caribbean." Dead silence on the other end of the line. "A cruise? With what money? Your pension barely covers your groceries." "With the card your father left me. A card you apparently didn't know existed." Another silence, but this one was different. I could hear her breathing quicken. "What card?" "Mom, Dad didn't have any special credit cards. I went through all his accounts when he died." "Well, apparently you didn't go through everything, sweetie." "Mom, don't tell me you're spending money you don't have on whims. You have enough financial problems as it is." "Jessica," I interrupted her with a calm that surprised even me. "I am having dinner in a restaurant where the food costs more than you spend on groceries in a week. I have a suite with an ocean view that's bigger than the apartment you lived in before you got married. And I am with a family that treats me with more respect and love than I have received from you in the last 5 years." "A family? What family?" "A real family, Jessica. People who don't see me as a burden or a nuisance. People who appreciate what I do for them." "Mom, you're being ridiculous. Those people don't know you. They just want to take advantage of you and your money." "My money?" I laughed, but it wasn't a bitter laugh. It was a laugh of liberation. "Jessica, for 30 years, you took advantage of my time, my money, my love, and my energy. And when you didn't need me anymore, you threw me out like an old piece of furniture. These strangers have treated me with more dignity in 3 days than you have in 3 years." "Mom, don't hang up. We need to talk about this when you get back. The kids miss you. Chloe has been asking for you." "The kids miss me?" My voice cracked slightly. "Well, you can tell them that their grandmother is learning to live again, and that when I get back, things are going to be very different." I hung up the phone and returned to the table where Diego was saving me a piece of chocolate cake. "Miss Carol, are you okay? You look sad again." "I'm not sad, honey," I said, ruffling his curly hair. "I'm getting free." The next few days on the cruise were like living in a dream I never wanted to wake up from. In the mornings, I had breakfast on my suite's balcony, watching the sun rise over the turquoise Caribbean water. Diego and Lucy would always show up after 8, already dressed and ready to explore the ship, asking me what adventure we would have that day. "Miss Carol, there's a magic show today," Diego would shout, jumping on my bed as if it belonged to his own grandfather. "And there's a dance class too," Lucy would add, twirling in her new dress we'd bought at the ship's boutique. "Are you coming with us?" For the first time in years, someone was including me in fun plans. They weren't asking me to cook, clean, or babysit. They were inviting me to join in, to enjoy myself, to be part of the fun. In Nassau, we explored the old town together. Robert helped me off the tour bus when my knees complained about the steps. Hope insisted on taking pictures of me by the historic forts, saying I needed mementos of the day Carol Henderson conquered the Bahamas. In San Juan, as we walked through the colorful streets of Old San Juan, Diego took my hand. "Miss Carol, do you think I'll ever be as brave as the soldiers who lived in that fort?" "You're already brave, sweetie. You left your home, your school, your friends to come to a new city with your parents. That takes a lot of courage." The boy smiled at me with that pure smile kids have only when they feel truly understood by an adult. "Are you brave too? Is that why you're here with us instead of with your mean daughter?" His innocence broke my heart. My mean daughter. That's how Diego had labeled Jessica after hearing our phone call. "I'm learning to be brave, Diego. Sometimes it takes a while. But the peace didn't last long. On the 4th day of the cruise, while we were docked in St. Thomas, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Jessica. Over and over. When I finally answered, her voice was different. Desperate. Mom, where did you find that card? I told you. It was in my things. Mom, I've been going through all of Dad's accounts again. I called the bank, his accountant, even some of his old clients. Nobody knows anything about a corporate card. Something in her tone put me on alert. There was an urgency I didn't understand. And why does that matter, Jessica? The card works. It's in my name now. It matters because we've had some financial trouble. Jason lost his job again. The bills are piling up. And if Dad had accounts we didn't know about, there it was. The real reason for her persistent calls. She wasn't worried about me. She wanted to know if there was more money she could get her hands on. Jessica, when you kicked me out, you made it very clear that I was no longer your problem, that I should find my own place and fend for myself. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. Mom, don't be spiteful. You know what happened was, it was because of stress. Things have been tough and… Spiteful? I interrupted her. Jessica, you threw me out of my house the day before Thanksgiving. You told me I was a burden, that I was an interference. Do you really think that was just stress? Silence on the other end of the line. In the distance, I could hear my grandchildren playing. Chloe asking something about dinner. Matthew crying over a broken toy. The kids want to talk to you, she finally said. No. No? You don't want to talk to your own grandchildren? I don't want you using my grandchildren to manipulate me, Jessica. It's cruel to them and it's cruel to me. I'm not using them. They really miss you. If they really missed me, you wouldn't have waited until you needed money to call me. I hung up and sat on a bench at the port, watching tourists walk by with their maps and cameras. Normal families enjoying normal vacations. Robert came over and sat next to me. Everything okay, Carol? My daughter thinks I'm an idiot, I said without looking at him. She thinks I don't realize she only calls when she needs something. And do you realize it? I do now. Before I thought it was my duty to always be available for her. That's what good mothers did. Carol, a good mother raises children who respect her. Your daughter doesn't respect you. That doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes her a bad daughter. That night, having dinner at the ship's hibachi restaurant, Hope asked me a question that left me speechless. Carol, have you thought about what you're going to do when we get back to New York? I hadn't thought about it. During these magical days, I had managed to convince myself that the cruise could last forever, that we could just keep sailing eternally, without ever having to face the reality waiting for me on land. I guess I'll go back to the cabin in the Catskills. Alone? Alone. The kids, who had been eating their yakisoba noodles with chopsticks, Diego had managed to master them in 2 days, looked up. Why do you have to be alone, Miss Carol? Lucy asked. Can't you come live with us? My heart skipped a beat. Live with them? Was that even possible? Lucy, honey, you all have to start your new life in the city. You can't be burdened with an old lady. But you're not a burden, Diego protested. You help us, and you tell us stories, and you make the best coffee in the world. Hope and Robert exchanged a look. Carol, Hope said slowly, the apartment we found in Queens is big. 3 bedrooms. We were planning on using one as a home office for Robert, but honestly, we could really use the help with the kids while we get settled in a new city. And it wouldn't be charity. Robert added quickly, it would be a fair arrangement. You help us with the kids in the house, we share expenses, and, well, you'd have a real family. A real family? The words echoed in my head like bells. Are you serious? Completely serious, Hope confirmed. Carol, you changed our lives. When we were stranded on that highway, I thought that was it, that we weren't going to make it. You showed up like an angel and gave us hope. Now we want to give some of that kindness back to you. Diego got up from his chair and came to hug me. Say yes, Miss Carol. Please, it'll be super fun. For the first time in months, I cried tears of joy instead of tears of sorrow. The next day, our last day on the cruise, I got another call from Jessica. But this time, she sounded different. Furious. Mom, I need you to come back to New York immediately. Why? Because I've been investigating that card of yours. I've spoken to lawyers, the bank, everyone. That card is linked to accounts that are technically part of Dad's estate. My blood ran cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that the money you're spending on this ridiculous vacation isn't yours. It belongs to the family, and I'm going to stop you from wasting any more of it. Jessica, that card is in my name. Your father left it specifically for me. A judge will have to decide that, Mom, because tomorrow I'm filing a lawsuit to freeze all the accounts associated with that card. And I'm going to prove that you're squandering the family's assets. The world felt like it was tilting again. My own daughter was threatening to take me to court. Are you threatening me? I'm not threatening you, Mom. I'm warning you. Either you come back to New York tomorrow and we discuss this like adults, or we settle it in court. And I assure you, it won't be pleasant for you. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. It had all been too good to be true. Of course, Jessica would find a way to ruin it. But when I told Robert and Hope what happened, their reaction surprised me. Carol, Robert said with a resolve I hadn't heard from him before, that card has your name on it. Your husband left it specifically to you. Your daughter can threaten all she wants, but the law is on your side. Besides, Hope added, we're witnesses that you're not squandering anything. You're living the life you deserve after decades of sacrifice. What if she's right? What if she manages to take the card away from me? Diego, who had been listening quietly, came over and took my hand. Miss Carol, even if you don't have money for cruises, we'll still love you. The money doesn't matter. You matter. In that moment, I knew I had found something money could never buy. A family that loved me for who I was, not for what I could give them. We returned to New York 3 days later. But I didn't return as the same Carol who had left. During the flight from Florida, with Diego asleep on my lap and Lucy coloring in a book beside me, I felt a strange sense of calm, as if I had found my center after years of living off balance. The Molina family took me directly to their apartment in Queens. It was a 3-bedroom apartment in a building from the 80s, with balconies that overlooked a tree-lined street and the comforting sound of children playing in the park across the way. Nothing fancy, but full of life. This is your room, Carol, Hope said, opening the door to a bright room with a single bed and a small closet. It's not very big, but it gets good light, and you can see the park from the window. It was perfect. Simple, clean, and for the first time in years, completely mine. With no one to tell me I was in the way, that I was taking up space that wasn't mine, or that my presence was an inconvenience. It's beautiful, I mumbled, sitting on the bed and feeling the softness of the new mattress. Thank you for all of this. Don't thank us yet, Robert joked. Wait until Diego wakes you up at 6 in the morning asking if he can have breakfast. That first night, I slept better than I had in months. No nightmares about empty houses. No ghostly sound of footsteps that would never come. No crushing weight of loneliness. For the first time since Michael's death, I felt home. But the peace was short-lived. The next morning, as I was making breakfast for the kids, a routine I had naturally adopted and that they had joyfully accepted, the doorbell rang. It was Jessica. I saw her through the peephole before opening. She was wearing her most formal business suit, high heels, and that cold, determined expression I knew all too well. Beside her stood Jason, looking uncomfortable but resolved to support his wife. "Hello, Mom," she said as I opened the door, walking in without an invitation. "We need to talk." Diego and Lucy, who were at the breakfast table, instantly went silent when they heard her tone. "Good morning, Jessica," I replied calmly. "Jason, who are these kids?" Jessica asked, looking at the children as if they were intruders in a place they didn't belong. "This is Diego and Lucy," I said, placing a protective hand on Diego's shoulder. "They're the children of the family I'm living with now." "The family you're living with?" Jessica laughed in disbelief. "Mom, have you lost your mind? You're living with strangers?" "I'm living with people who respect me," I replied calmly. "What do you want, Jessica?" She pulled a folder of documents from her designer handbag. "I want you to sign these papers. They're documents to transfer the administration of that credit card to my name, to protect you from yourself." "Protect me from myself?" "Mom, you spent over $30,000 in 1 week, on a cruise. Do you realize how irresponsible that is for someone your age and in your financial situation? Diego stood up from his chair. Miss Carroll isn't irresponsible, he said, his voice trembling but brave. She helped us when nobody else would. Jessica looked down at him with the same disdain she would have for an insect. Kid, the adults are talking. Go to your room. Don't you talk to him like that, I said, my voice rising for the first time. Diego, you stay right here. This is your home. Their home? Jessica spun toward me, her eyes blazing with fury. Mom, you've gone completely senile. You're living with strangers, spending money that isn't yours, and now you're defending children who are not your responsibility. Just then, Hope and Robert came in from the kitchen, alerted by the shouting. Is there a problem here? Robert asked in a firm voice. Who are you to interfere in my family's business? Jessica snapped at him. We are Carol's family. Hope answered with a calm that contrasted sharply with Jessica's aggression. And you are shouting in our home. Carol is my mother, Jessica screamed. And these papers prove that she is being manipulated by opportunists. Opportunists? My voice broke with indignation. Jessica, for 3 years I lived in my own house paying every single bill while you and your family lived there for free. I paid for your wedding. I raised your children. I gave you all my savings when you needed it. And now you're telling me that they are the ones taking advantage of me? That was different. I'm your daughter. It was your obligation. My obligation was not to be your slave for the rest of my life. The silence that followed was deafening. The children were huddled together, frightened by the tension. Jason was staring at the floor, clearly uncomfortable. Hope held the baby in her arms, rocking him gently to keep him calm. Jessica took a deep breath and changed her tactic. Mom, look, I know things got out of hand when I asked you to leave the house. But it was temporary. We just needed space to reorganize our lives. Now that Jason has a job again, you can come back. I can come back? I looked at her, incredulous. After you called me a freeloader? After you said I was an interference? After you threatened me with lawsuits? Those were stressful moments. You know how I get when I'm under pressure. Yes, Jessica. I know exactly how you get when you're under pressure. You become a cruel, selfish person who is capable of destroying her own mother to get her way. Jason finally looked up. Carol, the kids miss you. A lot. Chloe cries at night asking when Grandma is coming back. A dagger straight to my heart. My grandchildren. The children I had raised like a second mother. If Chloe misses me so much, why didn't Jessica let me talk to her when I called? Because I thought it would be better to sort this out in person, Jessica mumbled, losing some of her aggression. Liar, I said with crystal clarity. You didn't let me talk to them because you knew if I heard their voices, I might give in to your manipulation. Like I always do. I took out my phone and dialed a number. Who are you calling? Jessica asked, alarmed. The bank. To confirm that the card is legally in my name and that Michael set it up specifically for me to use after his death. For the next 10 minutes, as I spoke with the bank's customer service, I could see the color drain from Jessica's face. Every confirmation I received from the other end of the line was another blow to her plan to take away the little I had left. Yes, I understand perfectly, I said into the phone. The account is in my name. It was set up by my husband before his death specifically for my use, and I have full legal authority over it. Can anyone else lay claim to those funds? I see. Thank you. I hung up and looked directly at Jessica. The card is mine, legally and completely mine. Michael had a separate business account that he never mentioned in the will, because he knew if he did, you would try to take it from me. He set it up so that only I could access it after he was gone. That can't be true, Jessica whispered. Your father knew me better than you ever have. He knew I would need it one day, and he knew you would try to take it away. Robert stepped forward and stood beside me. Ma'am, I think it's time for you to leave. You can't kick me out. I'm talking to my mother. You're shouting in my home, Hope said in a firm voice. And you're scaring my children. Jessica looked at me with a mixture of desperation and rage. Mom, if you don't come back with me, if you don't sign these papers, you are never going to see Chloe and Matthew again. The final threat. The last resort of someone who knew they had lost. Jessica, I said with a calm that surprised me, those children are going to grow up. They're going to become adults. They're going to ask questions about why their grandmother disappeared from their lives. And when that time comes, you're going to have to explain to them that you chose money over love, that you chose manipulation over family. Don't you tell me how to raise my children. I'm not going to tell you anything else, Jessica, because as of today, you and I have nothing left to talk about. I handed her the keys to the cabin in the Catskills. You can have this too. After all, you always wanted everything that was mine. Jessica took the keys with trembling hands. Mom, please. It can't end like this between us. It already ended, sweetie. It ended the day you threw me out of my home. It just took me a little while to realize it. I watched her leave, followed by Jason, who didn't dare look me in the eye. When the door closed, Diego came running and hugged me. Miss Carol, are you sad? No, sweetie, I said. And for the first time in months, it was completely true. I'm not sad. I'm free. 2 weeks after the confrontation with Jessica, just when I thought I had finally found peace, I received a text message that made my blood run cold. It was from an unknown number, but I immediately recognized the profile picture. Chloe, my 12-year-old granddaughter. Grandma Carol, please don't forget me. Mom says you don't love us anymore because you have a new family. Is it true? The phone fell from my hands. Hope, who was preparing dinner next to me, picked it up and read the message. Oh my God, Carol. That woman is using the children to hurt you. I sat down on a kitchen chair, feeling as if I'd been punched in the stomach. For days, I had managed to convince myself that I had made the right decision, that my new life with the Molina family was a beautiful and necessary rebirth. But Chloe's message brought me back to the cruelest reality. There were innocent grandchildren caught in the middle of this war. What do I say to her? I mumbled, picking up the phone with trembling hands. The truth, answered Robert, who had heard from the living room. Always the truth, I texted back. My love, I love you more than life itself. Your mom is confused and hurting, but you are not to blame for anything. Grandma Carol will always love you, no matter what happens. The reply came immediately. Can I see you? Just for 5 minutes, please. My heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. I texted her the address of the park across the street from the apartment and told her I'd be there at 5 o'clock. I'm going with you, Hope said without hesitation. And so are we, added Diego, who had been listening to the whole conversation. If that mean lady comes, she won't be able to yell at you because there will be witnesses. At 5 o'clock sharp, I was sitting on a park bench, with Hope beside me and Diego and Lucy playing on the nearby swings, keeping just enough distance to give me privacy. At 5:10, I saw a familiar figure running through the trees. It was Chloe, but when she got closer, the shock took my breath away. My granddaughter had lost weight. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and she was wearing the same wrinkled pajamas I recognized from her sleepovers. She looked neglected. Grandma! She cried, running toward me with tears streaming down her cheeks. I thought you didn't love me anymore. I hugged her with a force that felt like it might break my own heart. She smelled of sadness, of a neglected home, of a little girl who hadn't been given enough attention. My love, my beautiful girl, I whispered in her ear. I love you more than anything in this world. Why would you ever think I don't love you? Because Mom says you left because we were a bother, that you found other kids you like more. That's why you don't answer the phone when we call. I closed my eyes, feeling a rage I didn't know I was capable of. Jessica had gone so far as to make her own children believe their grandmother had abandoned them. Chloe, look at me, I said, taking her face in my hands. Your mom asked me to leave the house. She told me they didn't need me anymore, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. I could never, ever stop loving you. Then why don't you come back? The hardest question in the world, asked with the purest innocence. Because sometimes grown-ups make very big mistakes, my love, and your mom and I, we need time to fix those mistakes. Matthew cries every night, Chloe confessed, lowering her voice as if revealing a terrible secret. He says he wants you to come back and make him hot chocolate like you used to. And Dad is always angry because he doesn't have a job again. Jason lost his job again? Chloe nodded. He says bad words all the time, and Mom yells a lot. The house is really dirty because Mom says she doesn't have time to clean anymore because she has to work more. My world collapsed. They had lost their free nanny, their unpaid housekeeper, their emotional and financial support system, and now the children were paying the price. Grandma, can I stay with you for a little while? Just today. To remember what it feels like to be calm. That sentence completely destroyed me. A 12-year-old girl shouldn't know the meaning of being calm, because that implied that her home was not. Of course, my love, but you have to tell your mom where you are. She's not home. She went out with a friend to look for work. She doesn't know I left. We spent 2 hours in the park. I introduced her to Diego and Lucy, who welcomed her with the naturalness with which children accept other children. They played on the swings, ran through the trees, and for the first time in weeks, I saw my granddaughter truly laugh. Hope had brought snacks for everyone: ham and cheese sandwiches, orange juice, and homemade cookies she had baked that morning. Chloe ate as if she hadn't had a home-cooked meal in days. "Miss Hope," she said to my new daughter of the heart, "are you Diego and Lucy's grandma too?" "No, sweetie, I'm their mom." "Oh, it's just that you act like my Grandma Carol. You worry about our food and if we're cold." Hope looked at me with eyes full of understanding. She was a mother, too. She understood what it meant to see a child neglected. When it was time for Chloe to go home, she clung to me like a koala. "Grandma, I don't want to go back. Can I stay with you? I promise I'll be good." The most heartbreaking plea I had ever heard in my life. My own granddaughter asking for refuge from her own mother. "My love, you are always good. Always. This is not your fault. Do you understand? None of what's happening is your fault. But Mom says that if we hadn't been born, she could travel and be happy like other women." I had to bite my lip to keep from screaming. Jessica was telling her own children that they were the cause of her unhappiness. "Chloe, listen to me very carefully. You and Matthew are the most beautiful things that have ever happened to this family. You are a blessing. If anyone tells you otherwise, that person is very, very wrong." I gave her my phone number written on a piece of paper. "If you ever need to talk, if you're scared, if you just want to hear the voice of someone who loves you, you call me. Anytime. Do you promise?" "I promise, Grandma." I watched her walk away slowly, looking back every few steps, as if to make sure I was still there. I couldn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m, my phone rang. It was Chloe, whispering, "Grandma, Mom, and Dad are yelling really loud. Matthew is crying. I'm scared." "Where are you, sweetie?" "In my room, with the door closed. But I can still hear them. Do you want me to come over?" "You can't. Mom said if she sees you near the house, she'll call the police." I stayed on the phone with her for an hour, until the shouting stopped, and I could hear her steady breathing on the other end of the line. She had fallen asleep with the phone to her ear. The next day, I made a decision that would change my life forever. I went to a Child Protective Services office. "Good afternoon," I said to the social worker who met with me, a young woman with kind eyes. "I need to report a situation of child neglect." For 2 hours, I told her everything. The nightly shouting, Chloe's neglected appearance, the things she had told me about the lack of proper food and cleanliness in the house. I showed her the text messages. I explained the family situation. "Mrs. Henderson, I understand your concern," the social worker said. "But you must understand that filing a report like this against your own daughter could have very serious legal consequences." "The consequences of not filing it could be worse," I replied. "Those children are suffering, and I would rather have my daughter hate me forever than allow my grandchildren to grow up in a toxic environment." The report was processed that same week. CPS scheduled an unannounced visit to Jessica's home to evaluate the children's living conditions. I didn't have to wait long to find out the results. On Friday night, Jessica showed up at my door, consumed by fury. "How could you do this to me?" she screamed from the hallway. "Your own daughter! You called CPS on me as if I were a criminal." I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "I did it because those children need protection." The children are perfectly fine. The house was a little messy, that's all." "Jessica, Chloe came to see me last week. She had dark circles under her eyes. She'd lost weight, and she told me she can't remember the last time she ate a decent home-cooked meal." "You're exaggerating. The kids eat every day." "Eating isn't just about not starving. Eating is about sitting down as a family, talking, feeling cared for. When was the last time you all had dinner together without shouting? Jessica fell silent because she knew she had no answer. Besides, I continued, the social worker confirmed to me that they found the home in inadequate condition. Not enough food in the refrigerator, weeks of dirty laundry piled up, and Matthew had a skin rash that had gone untreated for days. Those are minor details. I'm not a bad mother. You're not a bad person, Jessica. But right now, you are being a bad mother. And if you don't change, you are going to lose those children for good. I saw her crumble. For the first time since she was an adult, I saw my daughter truly cry. Not tears of manipulation or self-pity, the tears of a woman who was finally realizing what she had lost. I don't know how to fix this, Mom, she whispered. Everything has spun out of control. Jason is depressed, I'm desperate for money, the kids drive me crazy. I don't know how to be the mother they need. For the first time in months, I felt an echo of the maternal love I had felt for her entire life. The first step is admitting you need help, I told her gently. The second is to stop blaming everyone else for your problems. And the third is to ask for it. 6 months later, my life had changed in ways I never could have imagined. It was a Saturday morning in May, and I was in the apartment kitchen making pancakes for Diego, Lucy, and a very special guest who was coming for breakfast. Chloe. Child Protective Services had established a supervised visitation schedule that allowed my grandchildren to spend weekends with me while Jessica attended mandatory family therapy. The change in Chloe over these months had been extraordinary. Her dark circles were gone, she had regained a healthy weight, and most importantly, she was laughing again. Matthew, now 10, had also blossomed. He was no longer the shy, scared boy I remembered from my last days at the house. He was curious, talkative, and had become inseparable from Diego. "Miss Carroll!" Diego shouted from the living room. "Chloe and Matthew are here." I heard the door open and my granddaughter's familiar voice. "It smells like pancakes. Grandma, I missed you so much this week." Chloe ran into the kitchen and hugged me with the kind of strength only children who have learned to value moments of happiness possess. Matthew followed behind, more reserved but with a genuine smile. "Hi, Grandma Carroll. Can I help with the pancakes?" "Of course, my love. You are my official sous chef." As we all cooked together, Diego mixing the batter, Lucy setting the table, Chloe cutting strawberries, and Matthew making sure the pancakes didn't burn, I felt a sense of fulfillment I had never experienced before. This kitchen, filled with children's laughter, overlapping conversations, and minor spills that turned into giggles, was exactly the home I had always dreamed of. Hope came in carrying the baby, who was now almost a year old, and had started taking his first wobbly steps. "Good morning, family," she said with the smile that reminded me every day why I had chosen this new life. "How did my little princes and princesses sleep?" "Great," Matthew shouted. "And I dreamed we were pirates sailing on a giant ship with Grandma Carroll. And was I a pirate too?" I asked, pretending to be serious. "Yes, the bravest pirate captain in the whole world." Robert appeared from his makeshift office, where he now worked from home for his new tech consulting firm. The job he had landed after arriving in New York had turned out to be exactly what he needed. Stable, well-paying, and flexible enough for him to be present in his family's life. "Sorry I'm late," he said, kissing Hope on the forehead. "I had a video call with a client in California, but I'm done now. What do you need me to do?" "Nothing," I said. "Just enjoy breakfast with us." During breakfast, Chloe told me about her new school, where she'd made a best friend named Sophia. Matthew told me about the soccer team he'd joined and how he'd scored his first goal last week. Diego and Lucy competed to see who could eat the most pancakes without getting syrup all over their faces. It was, in a word, perfect. It was the family I had longed for my whole life without knowing it was possible to find it outside of blood ties. After breakfast, while the kids were playing in the park across the street, my phone rang. It was Jessica. Over these 6 months, our conversations had gradually changed. At first, they were tense, full of mutual blame and awkward silences, but the family therapy had started to work on both of us. We had learned to communicate without reopening old wounds, without attacks, without the manipulation that had defined our relationship for years. "Hi, Mom. How are the kids?" "They're happy," I answered simply. Matthew scored a goal this week, and Chloe has a new best friend. I'm so glad. And I could hear in her voice that she meant it. Mom, can we talk when you bring them back this afternoon? There's something important I want to tell you. Of course, Jessica. Is everything okay? Yes, I think so. For the first time in a long time, I think everything is going to be okay. That afternoon, after a day filled with laughter, games in the park, an impromptu lunch of sandwiches, and a collective nap on the sofa while watching an animated movie, it was time to take my grandchildren back to their mother. Jessica's apartment had changed drastically. It was clean, tidy, with fresh flowers on the dining table and the scent of a home-cooked meal wafting through the air. Jason greeted me with a genuine smile, something I hadn't seen in years. Carol, it's so good to see you. The kids look fantastic. Thanks, Jason. How are things here? Better, much better. I got a new job, something more stable this time. And Jessica, well, Jessica is doing incredible work in therapy. Jessica appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on an apron I recognized immediately. It was the same one I used to wear when I lived with them, but seeing her wear it didn't hurt the way I thought it would. Instead, it gave me hope. Hi, Mom. Hi, Jessica. We sat in the living room while the kids ran to their rooms to find toys they wanted to show me. For the first time in years, the air wasn't thick with tension. Mom, I've been thinking a lot these past few months, Jessica began, looking me straight in the eye. About everything that happened. About the things I said to you. About how I treated you. I remained silent, giving her the space to continue. In therapy, I've understood that I projected all of my own frustrations onto you. My marriage wasn't what I expected. My career had stalled. I felt trapped. I made you the enemy when you were the only person who unconditionally supported me. The words hung in the air between us like a fragile but real bridge. It was hard for me to admit this, but I used you, Mom. I used you as a free housekeeper, an unpaid nanny, an emotional crutch, and when I didn't need you for those functions anymore, I discarded you like you were an object. I felt tears forming in my eyes, but they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of relief. My daughter finally understood. And the most horrible part of it all is that when you left and started your new life, I felt jealous. Jealous that you were happy without me. Jealous that you had found a family that valued you. Jealous that you had discovered you could live without carrying my problems. Jessica, let me finish, please. She interrupted softly. I want to apologize. Not a superficial apology to get you to come back and fix my life again. A real, deep apology for treating you as if you had no value beyond what you could give me. I stood up from the sofa and went to her. For the first time in years, my daughter let me truly hug her. It wasn't a forced or formal hug. It was the hug of two women who finally understood each other. I forgive you, Jessica. I forgive you because I love you, but mostly because I see that you have truly changed. I don't expect you to come back and live with us, she said. I understand you have your own life now, your own family, but I would like it if we could rebuild our relationship from scratch, as two adults who respect each other. I would like that too. Chloe and Matthew came running back into the living room, interrupting our moment with the naturalness of children. Grandma, look what I found. Chloe showed me a drawing she had made years ago, when she was little. It was a house with 4 figures, Dad, Mom, Matthew, and her. And to the side, a little separate but still smiling, was a 5th figure with gray hair and an apron. Grandma Carol, the label read. I kept it all this time, she explained, because I always knew you were part of our family, even when Mom was confused. That evening, back at my apartment with the Molinas, we all had dinner together, just like every night for the past 6 months. A perfect frittata, a fresh salad, homemade bread I baked on Sundays, and conversations that flowed naturally between adults and children. How did it go with Jessica? Hope asked as we cleared the plates. Good. Really good. I think we've finally found a way to be mother and daughter without hurting each other. I'm so happy for you, Carol. You deserve to have peace with everyone you love. That night, as I was tucking Diego and Lucy into bed, a routine I had adopted and that they looked forward to every night, Diego asked me, Miss Carol, now that your daughter isn't mean anymore, are you going to go live with her? The question took me by surprise, but the answer was immediate and clear. No, my love. My place is here, with you. Jessica doesn't need me in the wrong way she needed me before. Now she needs me as a mother, not as an employee. And that means she can love me from a distance, respecting that I have my own life. And can we still be your grandchildren of the heart? Forever, Diego. For the rest of our lives. 3 months later, in August, we organized the first ever integrated family gathering. In a large city park, we spread out blankets under the trees for a picnic that included the entire Molina family, Jessica, Jason, Chloe, and Matthew, and even Hope's sister, Maribel, with her family. It was beautiful to see all the children playing together, unaware of the complicated histories of the adults. Chloe teaching Lucy how to make friendship bracelets, Matthew and Diego chasing a soccer ball, Hope's baby crawling between the blankets, being doted on by all the older kids. Jessica and Hope chatted like any two normal mothers, sharing anecdotes about their kids' antics and the challenges of parenting. Jason and Robert discovered they were both die-hard Yankees fans and spent an hour debating the season's prospects. And I sat on a blanket, a cup of coffee in my hands, watching this extended, improbable family that I had built without even realizing it. At the end of the day, as we were packing up the remains of the picnic, Jessica came over to me. "Mom, thank you." "For what, sweetie?" "For not giving up on me. For loving my children even when I didn't know how to do it right. And for finding the happiness you deserved, even if it wasn't with me." That night, I wrote in the journal I had started keeping since my new life began. Today, I understood that family isn't defined by blood, but by love, respect, and the mutual choice to take care of one another. I lost a daughter who took me for granted, but I found a family that celebrates me every day. I regained a daughter who learned to value me, and I gained grandchildren of the heart who have taught me that love can multiply infinitely without ever being divided. At 63, I have finally learned the most important lesson of my life. It is never too late to start over. It is never too late to demand the respect you deserve. And it is never too late to find where you truly belong. Have you ever experienced something similar? Do you know someone who had to choose between the comfort of the familiar and the dignity of the new? Tell me in the comments. If this story touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel so this message can reach someone else who needs to hear it.